This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
Hello everyone, I'm Pala, and welcome to the first episode of our new series, The Asunta Case, the true story behind the Netflix series that's generated so much debate. It all started a couple of weeks ago when Lucia and I found ourselves, as usual, trying to decide what to watch on Netflix. I had read a review on a true crime site talking about this series based on a real event. I have to be honest, at first I wasn't very convinced. As you know, I love crime documentaries and true crime series, but there's a type of storytelling that always leaves me a bit uneasy. Real-life stories acted out by actors. You know, the recreation of real events with actors, narrative interventions, and a bit of creative license. It's not exactly my favorite genre. However, I decided to give it a chance. We started watching the first episode, and I really liked it. So, over the course of a week, we binge-watched all the episodes. Now, I'll warn you right away. This episode will contain some spoilers, so if you don't want to know how the story ends, come back after watching the series. Although, let's be honest, it's a pretty well-known case, and a quick Google search will give you all the information. The series follows the case to its natural conclusion, as hinted at in the early episodes. There's a clear resolution, so I guess there won't be a second season. After finishing the series, since I had to wait a bit to prepare the upcoming episodes, I thought, why not dig deeper into the topic? I searched online for available documents and came across the court ruling for the case. It's a 55-page document in Spanish, and since I speak and understand it pretty well, I started reading it. The surprise was huge. The ruling read like the script for the series. It was as if the writers had followed the document point by point. Then, to better understand the context, I visited my usual sites and discussion forums, like Rabbit, where many users were commenting on the series. That's when I discovered a documentary titled, What the Truth Hides, The Asunta Case. This is a documentary you can find online on a Spanish streaming site by signing up for free. It's made up of 3 episodes, each about an hour and a half long. After watching the first episode, I immediately realized that the writers of the Netflix series had been heavily inspired by this documentary. They had thoroughly studied the case documents and created a very detailed reconstruction, from specifics like the colors of the shirts to the actors' physical appearance and behavior. Yesterday, I posted a question box on Instagram and asked you all, did you like the series? The responses were mixed. Many said yes, some said no, and several criticized the acting. I have to admit, I had some issues with the acting too. We started watching the first 2 episodes in Italian, but then switched to Spanish. It was especially difficult to follow the actress who played Asunta's mother in Italian, so we preferred the Spanish version. I have to admit, her performance left me a bit unsettled. Then, while browsing Reddit, I came across a comment from a girl from Santiago who mentioned that she even knew the real woman portrayed in the series and had followed the case passionately through the newspapers. You should know that in Spain, the Asunta case has been compared, due to its notoriety, to the Yara case in Italy. It's a case that has deeply impacted the Spanish collective imagination, reaching households everywhere. The girl on Reddit mentioned that the way the actress acted, her tone of voice, and her manner of expression were identical to how Asunta's mother spoke in real life. Small spoiler, the mother took her own life in prison in 2020. If you watch the documentary and compare the photos of the real people with those from the series, you'll notice they are very similar, even physiologically. I really appreciated this aspect. The series is full of carefully crafted details. For example, the courtroom is identical to the one where the real trial took place. There's a truly meticulous reconstruction, even down to the dialogue. At one point, Rosario Porto's lawyer, during the real trial, said, "With many fewer resources, I managed to find these 3 chords." This exact line is repeated in the series. In short, the series is a very faithful reconstruction of the events. Anyone watching it shouldn't think there are huge fabrications. Aside from some dreamlike sequences in the 5th episode, the reconstruction is really accurate. However, there's an underlying problem. The case is very complex. It's similar to the Yara case in certain aspects. We're talking about a 13-year-old girl with DNA found on her body that doesn't match her parents, who were later both convicted. There are definitely points that strongly resemble the Yara case. At first, it seems like a simple, almost trivial story. The mom or dad who kills their daughter. But the more you dig into it, the more the details don't fit together as you would expect. This intrigues me a lot because it's precisely these complex cases that fascinate me. I love reading, comparing testimonies, analyzing details, like a recording or a neighbor's statement that later turns out to be unverified. Those are the things I'm passionate about. But let's dive deeper and talk about the main characters in this story. Rosario Porto, Alfonso, the father, and of course, Asunta, the girl. Who was Rosario Porto? As I mentioned, she took her life in prison in 2020. She was a lawyer, the daughter of 2 very well-known parents in Santiago de Compostela, Spain. Rosario's mother was a highly regarded art history professor at the university. Her father was a lawyer who ran a significant law firm and even served as the honorary consul for France. This position was passed on to Rosario in 1997. One important detail, the year before 2013, which is the year Asunta was murdered, both of Rosario's parents passed away. This fact is mentioned in the series, but it's not explained very well, and there's one point that isn't clear, but I'll clarify that later. Now, before we continue, let's introduce the husband, Alfonso. His figure is a bit less prominent than Rosario's, but still important. Alfonso is a promising economic journalist from Bilbao. He works in Santiago and writes for a media outlet specializing in economics, often participating in television programs on the subject. In 1990, he met Rosario, and love blossomed between them, although some malicious folks say he was more infatuated with her. They got married in 1996. The couple tries to have children naturally, but Rosario suffers from some health issues. She has lupus, a condition that poses complications for pregnancy. The doctor advises her against continuing with a pregnancy, but the desire to become parents is very strong for both of them. They then decide to pursue an adoption process, but not from the countries where adopted children usually come from. They choose to go to China. In 2001, they adopt a 9-month-old girl and name her Asunta. Asunta becomes the first Chinese girl adopted in Santiago and is easily recognizable, even for her Asian features. The story of this family seems perfect. They are wealthy and lead an apparently serene life. Rosario is a successful lawyer, so much so that Alfonso decides to set aside his career as a journalist to focus on the family. Recently, it seems he no longer worked and took care of the home, although they had a nanny to help manage their daily life. The family's life changes completely on January 5th, 2013, a year that will prove to be cursed for them, culminating in the tragic death of Asunta on September 21st. But it all begins on that January day when Alfonso discovers his wife Rosario's repeated infidelities. A very intense confrontation ensues between them, which is also depicted in the series, and they ultimately decide to separate. The separation is quickly agreed upon, and by mid-February, they are legally separated. At first, Alfonso struggles to cope with the breakup and decides to see a psychologist to process the situation. Rosario, in addition to her physical problems, also suffers from mental health issues. She experiences depression and moments of deep despair. For example, during that summer, she is hospitalized for over a week due to a severe depressive episode. However, as the months go by, the relationship between Rosario and Alfonso improves. Asunta stays with her mother in the family home, while Rosario commits to financially supporting Alfonso by paying his rent since he is not working at that time. This detail isn't clearly explained in the series. They mention that he goes to live with an aunt, but I found two sources that confirm Rosario was helping her husband financially by covering the rent for a house practically across the street. This way, Asunta could freely move between her dad and her mom. The summer of 2013 is particularly difficult.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Meaningless stuff. Why do we gift so much meaningless stuff? Tired of generic gifts and hollow trends? Shutterfly allows you to create meaningful photo gifts for your family and friends. Whether it's a cozy fleece blanket for grandma, a stunning canvas print for mom, or a mug to make dad smile. Enjoy 40% off with code MAKE40 at Shutterfly.com and make something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
In July, a series of strange events occur, and Asunta begins to show some health issues. We will revisit this in a future episode. It's important to emphasize that the Spanish court ruling stated that Asunta's fainting spells and drowsiness were induced by her parents, who dissolved benzodiazepines in their daughter's food. We will come back to this point later. In 2012, 7 months prior, Asunta's grandparents, Rosario's parents, pass away suddenly from natural causes. Although, of course, there are voices of conspiracy theories which I do not believe, I mention them because every major case always has a background of suspicion. The grandparents deeply adored Asunta, despite the pain of losing Rosario and her husband, and they considered her a true miracle, believing they wouldn't have any more grandchildren. Following the death of her parents, the inheritance was estimated to be around €1 million. Some malicious rumors suggested that the will named Asunta as the sole heir, which supposedly was the reason her mother would have killed her. However, the reality is that Rosario was the natural heir, so the financial motive isn't as straightforward as it seems. The Spanish ruling is interesting because it differs significantly from Italian rulings. For example, it is much shorter, only 55 pages. In Italy, 55 pages would only suffice for the jury's introduction. A document under 350 pages wouldn't even begin, while here, everything is laid out in just 55 pages. The Spanish ruling doesn't delve into the motive, nor does it clarify why the parents were sentenced to 18 years in prison for their daughter's murder. This struck me as odd because, in the case of Cogni, for example, almost no one questioned the technicalities or timelines, as if Anna Maria Fransoni could have committed a homicide. Returning to that difficult summer, when Rosario got out of the hospital, Alfonso was by her side. They decided to send Asunta on vacation with the nanny for the entire month of August. One strange thing I noticed is that even though they called almost every day to check on her, they never went to visit her, despite being less than an hour away by car. This detail really stood out to me. There are also other interesting episodes, such as a burglar breaking into their house in July, but we will come back to this later as it's related to later events. Now that I've opened so many parentheses, we can really begin the analysis. Today, we'll focus on that cursed Saturday, September 21st, 2013, in Santiago, a day when a sweet-faced girl enters the Spanish collective imagination and never leaves. At 1:55 p.m., a camera captures Asunta as she returns to her mother's house. 5 minutes later, another camera records her crossing the street to go to her father's house for lunch. At her father's home, there are 3 of them: Asunta, Rosario, and Alfonso. They have lunch together and then play some card games, spending the afternoon in family activities. But the first oddities begin to occur. At 4:59 p.m., 3 hours later, Alfonso's mobile phone receives a call. which turns out to be the last activity for several hours. At 5:21 p.m., Asunta is captured by the same camera as she returns home. After lunch and playing, Asunta goes back to her mother's house. And we know for certain that she was supposed to do her homework because she had indeed gone home for that reason. Her parents confirm it, and Asunta's room was not disturbed by either the parents or law enforcement. When the forensic police enter the house for their investigation, they still find the books scattered on the floor. One particular trait of Asunta was that she preferred studying on the floor. She had a desk, but liked to surround herself with her books and notebooks while sitting on the ground. She was very talented and had even skipped a school year. She loved acting and music, and she was a true child prodigy. I won't hide the fact that when the documentary shows the picture of her room with the notebooks on the floor, the image is particularly haunting, especially after watching the series and knowing what happened. So, it's 5:21 p.m. when Asunta returns home to start her homework. At 5:28 p.m., just 7 minutes later, Rosario passes by, coming back from Alfonso's house with the girl. But why 7 minutes? What did they say in that brief span of time? These 7 minutes are crucial because some, including the Spanish police, might think that during this interval, the two parents carried out a carefully crafted plan that had been studied in the weeks leading up to this moment. In those 7 minutes, one might speculate that the fate of Asunta was sealed. It's 5:28 p.m. when Rosario returns home, and a little over half an hour later, at 6:12 p.m., she appears on another camera as she heads to the garage to park her Mercedes. At 6:22 p.m., Rosario's Mercedes passes by a roundabout and a gas station. This moment is crucial for the investigation, and I'll explain it better in the next episode. We have 4 frames from this video, which last only a brief moment but clearly show the vehicle, a greenish-blue Mercedes. The camera doesn't focus on the driver, but there's a figure who doesn't appear very tall and seems to be wearing a white t-shirt. Asunta will be found wearing a white t-shirt, so it's very plausible to think that this figure represents the last image of Asunta with her mother. However, I'm not aware of the defense highlighting this point particularly. They focused on another fundamental aspect. At 6:24 p.m., a friend of Asunta swears she saw the girl and her dad walking in Santiago. We'll address this point later, as it represents a key moment in the case. But let's return to the Mercedes, which at that moment carries Rosario and Asunta. At 6:35 p.m., less than 15 minutes later, they were heading to Teo, a small village about 15 to 25 minutes from Santiago. It's not a tourist spot, but many people have summer homes there or choose to live a bit outside the city, where there are beautiful houses. Rosario's parents owned a property there, a large villa with a pool and a spacious garden, located slightly outside Santiago in an affluent area. According to Rosario's account, when she reports Asunta missing, they were going there to pick up costumes. This is a point that may seem plausible. At 6:35 p.m., the house alarm is disabled. The murder of Asunta, which was by suffocation, would have occurred between 7 and 8 p.m. Something crushed the girl's face. At 7:29 p.m., Rosario reportedly had a small interaction online, but we don't know what she was searching for. At 8:53 p.m., the house alarm is reactivated, so the alarm is disabled at 6:35 p.m. and reactivated at 8:53 p.m. What stands out is that there are 2 hours of time in which Rosario, according to her story, would have been searching for costumes. 2 hours to look for costumes definitely seems excessive. It's true that she might have been tidying up the house a bit, but there were no signs of effective cleaning. The house was semi-abandoned because they didn't usually go there, so there are 2 hours during which she is supposed to be in that house. Initially, Rosario claims she is alone, but then states she was with her daughter, leaving room for questions about what she might have done. After 8:53 p.m., Rosario exits through the gate of the estate and encounters a neighbor who greets her. The police are convinced that Asunta's body was in the trunk of the Mercedes. During their interaction, the neighbor exchanges a few words with Rosario, noting that he rarely sees her and asking when she'll return. Rosario appears calm and raises no suspicions. According to the police version, Rosario allegedly unloaded Asunta's body less than 2 kilometers from their home before quickly returning to simulate the second part of her plan, the search for her daughter. Around 10:31 p.m., the parents of Asunta, after a call from Rosario to Alfonso around 9:30 p.m., formally reported her missing. The report, which is crucial to understanding the case, contains a somewhat strange story from Rosario. She claims to have returned home a few minutes after her daughter, confirming that Asunta was doing her homework, which is true, but she adds that the girl was tired. However, subsequent evidence indicates that Asunta was far beyond mere tiredness. 27 lorazepam pills were found in her system, suggesting she was practically unconscious. Rosario then states she went to the estate to pick up costumes, and upon returning home, she noticed Asunta was missing. She went to check with Alfonso to see if their daughter was there. After confirming that Asunta was absent, they contacted friends and family, moving around a bit before deciding to contact the authorities to report her disappearance. Around 1 a.m., 2 individuals called the police, claiming to have found the body of a girl. In reality, they were 2 homeless men. The documentary explains this situation more thoroughly than the series, which addresses the matter more superficially. These 2 men, in a white Golf, pass by a dark and semi-abandoned road and see the body. It's unclear whether the car was stolen or borrowed, but the 2 men do not want to be seen there and return to a pub where they had been drinking. Ultimately, they decide to call the police and wait. It's important to note that the 2 men are known to the police, who immediately begin to suspect them.
Way to eat a tea. You're listening to an ad for PC Game Pass. Want new games on day one like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? How about living out your Sims life with EA Play? We're talking high-quality PC games all for one low monthly price. We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle available December 9th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. Okay, that's the ad. You can go back to doing whatever you were doing now.
Make this summer count with Harvard Summer School. With Harvard's free college programs, high school students gain confidence and insight into what college is all about, challenge themselves, and discover new friends. There are over 200 courses to choose from, including college credit courses, so it's the ideal way for students to learn something new, but most importantly, have fun. Visit info.summer.harvard.edu/Spotify to learn more.
They go to check the car, which turns out to be clean, and the 2 men have an alibi since they had been seen by everyone at the pub. However, they feel terrified, fearing they might be blamed for a crime they did not commit, but they are quickly exonerated. The girl's body shows marks on her neck, indicative of suffocation. The autopsy conclusively establishes that she was asphyxiated with an object that crushed her face. There are stains, which the defense claims are semen, while the prosecution is vaguer, stating that they do not belong to the father and obviously not to the mother. There are no signs of sexual violence. However, next to the body are 3 pieces of orange rope. Take note of this orange rope, as it will emerge as one of the most significant pieces of evidence. Interestingly, the identical rope will later be found at Rosario's estate. A troubling episode emerges as the parents begin to contradict themselves and say illogical things. For example, on the same night, or perhaps the following night, September 22nd, after the body has already been found, the police visit the parents, who are visibly distressed. The investigators are reconstructing the events of the previous day, and an inspector asks Rosario where the costumes she brought home are. Rosario opens a drawer and shows the folded costumes, responding, "But excuse me, when you came home and couldn't find your daughter, did you have time to fold and put away the costumes?" At this point, she freezes, highlighting the contradiction in her story. This aspect is interesting because the investigators immediately understand that the 2 parents are hiding something. The situation becomes even more serious when Rosario is arrested on the day of her daughter's funeral. In fact, she is detained shortly before the ceremony, which is a fact that could have been easily avoided. When recounting this story, it may seem like an obvious case, almost banal. My fear, in the first episode, was that the situation would be simple and the culprits evident. However, Credible motives do not emerge, but rather very strange behaviors. The question remains open. You know that when I can, I leave you with a question. And this week, perhaps while watching the series, it is the following. There are two possibilities. Either this is a brilliant plan orchestrated by the parents, whose only mistake was not realizing the camera, the pills, and the rope. Details that can easily go unnoticed. Or we are dealing with a woman, Rosario, who goes mad. She is a woman crushed by depression, by the absence of her lover, by her disdain for her husband, and by her own life, to the point of deciding to take it out on her daughter. These are the two most probable and plausible routes, although I do not exclude the possibility of a third avenue, that of an accident. When we do the reconstructions, we will also discuss this. What fascinates me most about this case is the interplay of minutes, cell phone pings, calls, statements, and the silence between husband and wife. It almost seems that the two are bound by a pact not to reveal anything, and indeed, nothing comes from their lips. Alfonso is expected to be released in 2031. He has always professed his innocence and continues to do so. He has decided, as a form of protest, to serve his entire sentence, even though he could be released earlier. He does this to demonstrate his complete innocence. The connection between these two choices is not clear, but he is certainly aware and has his reasons. Get ready, because in the upcoming episodes, there will be surprising developments. No, the neighbor who spoke to Rosario did not see the girl, but another neighbor enters the scene, firmly asserting the couple's innocence. We will discuss this next week. I hope I have piqued your curiosity and that you watch the series so you are a bit more informed for the next episode.
How about some fresh out of the oven gingerbread, bright snowdrop, fresh Iowa pine, and cool peppermint to put you in the holiday cleaning spirit? Made with goodness, not a lot of nonsense. Mrs. Meyer's. See what good can grow. Visit mrsmeyers.com today.
Trust me, this is an explosive case, and next week we will have a lot of fun. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you for the next episode of Dpen Crimes. Bye, everyone.